Hi there, welcome back to the Dylan Rounds case. Welcome if you're currently here in the live premiere. Today I wanted to give an update regarding Bibbins' arrest and more so the update on his dog or dogs. Weezer was able to provide an explanation last night or the night before in the chat, and I just wanted to present to you, the general public, so you know what's going on and what's up. In addition, I do want to add on some additional thoughts when we're speaking of Bibbins and him getting in trouble with the police. I've heard some complaints recently in whiny tones. I just want to put things into perspective today and do a comparison with Brenner, and it might make it just a little bit clearer to some. For those that are currently here in this live premiere, be sure to share your thoughts, opinions in the chat. And if you wish to elaborate and leave comments, questions down below, you can. We don't need to look at the comments of the previous video because there's only 2. So yeah, that seems to be under control. Top right corner of the screen, the I symbol, if you click on that, you can be redirected to the full Dylan Rounds playlist, over 400 videos documenting, analysing this case more than anybody else in its entire community. And as well, some additional videos in recent time if you wish to catch up with them. So the order of how we're going to go about things today, I'm going to present to you the latest update first of all in a screenshot format, analyse if necessary, and then move on to the key point and comparison with Brenner, okay? So here we are with the comment. Weezer says, Raf, you are correct on the location of the concert hall. As well, the dog has finally been located. She is in the animal shelter until Bibbins gets out or makes further arrangements. I am unable to see the chat when I watch replay. I'm not sure what has changed. I used to be able to see it. So there are a few things to analyse and clear up here. So the first point by Weezer saying that I was correct about the location of the concert hall. That was in relation to, pinpointing the area where Bibbins' van remains parked up. I don't know if that still applies till this day, but it has been there for some time after his arrest. Okay, that's just worth taking in mind. Some people were slightly concerned or worried that maybe the dogs were left in the van or not, but as confirmed here, it has been confirmed. Bibbins' dog was located and is in an animal shelter being looked after. Okay, and that's until Bibbins gets out. Once he's done his time, however long that is, or if there's any more arrangements in between. So Bibbins is in for quite some time. There might be an arrangement where Bibbins gets a friend of somebody in Lucin or Montello, whoever that may be, to look after the dog in between. That's always a possibility. Okay. And a bit about Weezer not being able to see the chat. I think it was last night possibly that Weezer was able to fix it and it is working once again. The only thing that I will acknowledge with Weezer's point about last night's live premiere was it was as if the chat froze, but I don't think that's the case, Weezer. I just think that at a point in time into the live premiere, people were more focused watching the video than commenting, which is perfectly fine. It shows a good display of focus and concentration. I was able to, post a comment or so in the live chat at the time. I just posted a random emoji just to test if the chat was working or not. If it did freeze, what would have happened would have been posting it, and then I would have had like a red X and it would have said can't send. And if I tried refreshing the page, it would have said can't send. And we've had that issue in the past when it did freeze for everyone. But I think on this occasion, most people were just watching the video rather than commenting or messing about, okay? But I believe Weezer was able to find the chat replay in the end, which is a positive there. I mean, at least when it comes to live streams, what I do late at night at times, there can be a delay with that as for when the live chat replay shows up. I mean, for most part of it, I do have live chat replay turned on my videos in the YouTube studio mode. I always make sure to hover over that. But I'm not too sure if that feature is still available to this day. I'll have to have a look back. I think what happens is, originally, I'd upload a video and then I would make some adjustments, right? And sometimes the box wouldn't be ticked live chat replay. So you'd have to click on the box, press save, and then you guarantee that the live chat replay is there for the future. So unless I need to start ticking the box, you know, but you can only tick the box once you've set the video as a live premiere. So then you go back into the studio mode, edit it, and tick the box. But the reason why I've not been doing that for some time now is because for some reason, last few months, I didn't have to tick the box. It could be left unticked, unmarked, and it would still show the live replay. So that's very weird, that having a feature which you don't have to enable and it still is enabled anyway. But if for the future it needs to be reinforced, adjustments can be made on my end to secure a guarantee. Okay, now with this little update out the way, let's move on with the discussion with the Dylan Rounds case. So I do want to follow on from last night's video, give my summary there, because it was covering and focusing on new and old locations of interest which need to be searched, places, some of which have never been searched, and that's to do with trying to locate Dylan Rounds' remains and maybe evidence along the way. If you'd like to catch up on that video, top right corner of the screen, you click on the eye symbol, you'll be able to find it there and follow on. And as I said, the comment section, there's really not many comments there, so we don't need to catch up on anything at that point. As for the live chat though, somewhat interesting, a range of different people, others returning, some coming back on their hands and knees, as you know, same old story. I don't know why, but I do want to acknowledge a very important point. So for, you know, regular people watching, I understand some people have, you know, given their advice, don't be getting involved in conflict or drama because it brings the wrong crowd of people over. Well, at least last couple of days I've not, okay? And as for last night's video, it had really nothing to do with drama or to that extent. It was mainly focused around Dylan Rounds, the search for him, and on Google Earth, okay? That's what it was prioritizing last night. And it was somewhat interesting. It did point out locations of interest which could have endless possibilities of maybe some dodgy stuff going on. Still, there's always that possibility that even if those locations may not ultimately link to Dylan, it could link to another missing person if there are others out there or other types of dodgy or illegal activities going on, right? So it was a pretty serious, focused video. Usage of maps, which people like. And yet, the certain type of people that came on in are the same type of people that would come on in when there's drama and conflict. So what my point is, in response to the regular people giving advice to me, what this goes to show and prove is I can be a goody little boy and stick with the facts or stick with the case, you know, remain on track. I can do everything right, but there will still always be dark forces coming on over, infiltrating, causing disruption, whatever it may be, okay? So whether I participate in external stuff or not, there's always that chance that people will come in regardless, okay? So I just wanted to put that into perspective to other people out there. But yeah, as for that, it did go very quiet, okay? I think basically what happened was it separated the people that care about the Dylan Rounds case and those that can't be arsed, okay? I saw the numbers adjust, the statistics, and then it remained focused, boom. So shout out to the people that did stick around, and even shout out to the people that stuck around who may not be fully informed on the case or may not be fully invested but still stuck around to show support. It's very good of those people too. You've got to acknowledge that. And I say people in general because there'll be more than one good person. Okay, it's easier using that reference. So yeah, very interesting video last night. Now, with regards to now the presents of this video, talking about Bibbins. Brief little recap in case you're wondering. And for those that are just coming in first time round. Recent time. I think it was November 8th, November 10th, kind of earlier in November, where Bibbins got in trouble with police to do in possession of a firearm when he's not supposed to be in possession of one. The thing is, the Montello local reported that to the police a while ago, multiple times. Police did nothing about it. We're not talking about Box Elder. We're talking about a different police force, okay? So it's worth taking that into consideration. Dragged out. But why? Why would it be dragged out this long? Just like Brenner with his gun charges. That was partially dragged out, but more so Brenner's pending arrest to do with the aggravated assault in 2021. Really pending, really dragged out. Why? Sure, excuses can be made here and there, but you just put it into perspective how the crossover between the two people, the crossover in which the likes of Brenner and Bibbins got in trouble with police, arrested, taken in, but it being dragged out, and those charges and cases, nothing to do with Dylan Rounds, yet they were both dragged out in how they were handled by police, different police forces. Some similarities there, okay? Now, in terms of the exact location of where Bibbins got in trouble, at the concert hall where his vehicle was parked, if he maybe entered the concert hall in possession of a firearm when he's not supposed to, security noticed it and then alerted police, maybe. Or if it was along the highway or on one of the main roads going into West Wendover, approaching the concert hall. Maybe notified, seen by somebody, and then the police came in afterwards. It's just when I typed in the location, 300 West Wendover Boulevard, it came up with a road, not the concert hall. Now that road does follow on into West Wendover and Wendover, so it's along the same road. So maybe it just gives a brief, marker as to the road itself. And if Bibbins was driving down it and then went to the concert hall, then parked up, could have been in between then and, possibility. But after just giving that brief description, just like how people reacted previously, so breaking news. Does it matter? Well, first of all, there's several other people previously that hyped it up about Robert Aviles linked to Dylan. Robert Aviles getting in trouble here, getting arrested there, going into rehab, getting kicked out, whatever. Applying that to Dylan. That fell flat, and there wasn't much of a backup in explanation. And we know who said that type of stuff, didn't we? Oh yeah. What about Chase Venstra to an extent? Kinda. What about Kurt Wadsworth? Really hyped up by certain people and channels out there. Kind of fell flat. Not really backed up or explained with reasoning ability. Yeah, pathetic. But with this case, there is an explanation behind it, which others can't do. But I will demonstrate right here, right now. When it comes to Bibbins, besides a dragged out situation in which he was reported in the past by a Montello local and nothing was, no action taken up, but only now, just like with Brenner, besides that, when you look at Bibbins, the way it's been handled and what it can lead to is what we've got to acknowledge, right? And I'm just going to describe it with Brenner first to put him to perspective and then apply to Bibbins, okay? When it came to Brenner at the start of the Dylan Rounds case as it all unfolded, okay, family, parents seemed to be very sure and certain that it was Brenner from day one, but the police didn't see it that way. One of the reasons to why they didn't take action on Brenner immediately. And when he was eventually taken in, it wasn't primarily in the name of the Dylan Rounds case or anything to do with that. It was to do with unrelated charges, just like Chase Venstra. But it's what it led to afterwards, which then sparked it all off and held the person in custody or in Weber County Jail until evidence was found. That can apply to Bibbins as well, a possibility. So, when Brenner was taken in by police, it happened 2 occasions. One, temporary, second time, more so permanent from the looks of it. First time round with Brenner was around June the 10th or June the 11th. And then the following day was released. And Brenner went back to his trailer. And then fast forward to is it June 19th or round about there, June 18th, then Brena was taken on in, because I guess it followed in with the gun charges, being in possession of firearms when one isn't supposed to because he's a felon, okay? And it was partially assisted, or mainly assisted and sped up by the likes of Don Hatley, the friend of Brena, that basically was like a snake in the grass and grassed on Brena, you know, contacted the police or FBI, had an interview with them, handed in the .22 rifle, surrendered it over, as it was worded in the news articles at the time. And Kev explained it through how Brena was to be passing on these firearms to Don Hatley to keep hold of them, because with the police presence and Brena getting in trouble in the past, Brena didn't want a repeat of it. But Don Hatley didn't want to follow through with it, so he, you know, grasped on Brena and confessed. So Don Hatley was safe afterwards, from the looks of it, but Brena got in trouble. Now, we don't know how Brena was feeling towards Don Hatley at the time, maybe annoyed, frustrated, who knows. But then taken in, and as well taken in consideration, you know, just at the same time to do with that 2021 pending aggravated assault on an individual, I believe it was in Montello. You know, that finally caught up with Brena as well. Two separate charges cases, but coincided with one another, like in bulk. Okay, we're going to take Brena in now because of the gun charges, but we can also tie it in with a pending arrest from the past, so we'll do that as well. And of course, how they're dealt with afterwards with the court law and all that, can be done separate, spread out, whatever, different times, can drag things out in general, right? But the main thing is Brena was taken in, taken away from freedom, being out in the open. He was taken in and kind of in a way locked up, but not literally, because he's not in prison yet, right? He was held in custody, Weber County Jail, up to a certain point, go to the courts, the trials, if it does get to that, and then eventually maybe sentence, etc., 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 into the future, right? So I wanted to summarize it briefly. But the initial factor of Brena being taken in by police wasn't anything to do with Dylan Round's case, right? So when you look at Bibbins, got in trouble in recent time, unrelated to the Dylan Round's case when you look at it at first glance, to have a gun charge, shouldn't be in possession of one, similar to Brena, so the police take action after a delayed time, and then Bibbins is taken in. And then it's what happens after that point which matters, and which can then link to the Dylan Round's case, okay? So, referring back to the Brena situation, Brena taken in. Early days, he was interrogated, questioned. Now, how many times? At least once, but fast forward onwards, it didn't seem to happen again, and that's what Candice Cooley was criticising about Box Elder, not taking enough direct action and not following up on the interrogations, and later on in the case when evidence was found. That kind of fell through. Is that the same thing that would happen to Bibbins? Well, it depends if it gets to, you know, that length, that far in. Because whilst Brena was being held in custody, obviously the search for Dylan Rounds continued, but along the way, I guess evidence was found and pieced together to be presented in the future. In between all of that, Brena appearing in court, a hearing here, a hearing there, whilst reflecting back on the current charges, but as well, past ones as well. That health assessment sheet or something to do with which band he follows under, and as well not being granted bail or anything like that on certain conditions. We looked through that in the past previous videos, you want to catch up with that. And as well, when it came to Brena, whilst reflecting back on his past criminal history, the Maryland fatal wounding, which was shifted with time. Way back at the past, it was treated more like an attempt to kill, but then it was reduced to wounding. So it wasn't as serious or as bad, but it could have been an attempted murder, some people suggest, right? Some other trouble criminal history as well. And as well, it's been mentioned in the documents that Brena is seen as a threat to the general public. So there's enough reason to hold him in, right? And whilst things were in that situation, kind of like suspended until the court dates, the court cases, which obviously were dragged out in general, as you know, and the arraignments as well, which happened first, that was dragged out as well because of the different cases. Was it one federal, the other one something else, and then whether it be appointed 2 attorneys or not, the back and forth notion of that, a mess. But despite all of that happening, at least from June 18th, 19th, 2022 up to March the 3rd, 2023, which was the turning point. Between June to March 2023, that was the span and the space of time in which either evidence was collected or found, new stuff was retrieved from labs, from deep forensic dives, analysis, assessments, searches out in the open, etc. Now, it was November time, 2022. So it's not exactly in between. It's not an in-between month, but it followed because that was the next key point, which Candice Cooley reflected on and mentioned the November month of 2022 when she was speaking around the time of March the 3rd, 2023 onwards. And I'll just jump ahead just so you know why I'm referring back to November. So from June 18th, 19th, when Brena was officially taken in for good, technically speaking, many months on, March 3rd, 2023, East Idaho News, interview with Candice Cooley just in rounds about Brena being charged with the murder and desecration of Dylan Rounds. Obviously, before that event, there would have been evidence and something to be able to back it up to suggest that Brena is the one guilty and the one responsible, right? And that's what did happen. And Candice Cooley reflected back by saying in November time of 2022, the police found out about Dylan's phone and what was on it. But the family only knew about it after Brena was charged with the murder and desecration of Dylan many months on. So the family were kept in the dark for quite some time, okay? So in November time of 2022, police, that deep forensic dive on Dylan's phone, retrieving a video or files which were not accessible to begin with if you was just to simply turn the phone on and try and access the gallery, okay? A deep forensic analysis retrieved and found the time-lapse video with the timestamp of 7:27 a.m. on the 28th of May 2022, in which Brena was depicted seen in his own trailer with blood on his hands, his arms and maybe sleeves, and his shirt, what he was wearing, his top, which later found DNA of Dylan as well on that shirt. Brena cleaning a gun at the time. Because of the final phone ping of Dylan, which was presumed to be Dylan alive at 7:03 a.m. on the day, and then 7:27, Dylan's phone being in Brena's possession in between the start and the end point, that's probably when Dylan was taken out, right? Hence the blood too. Yeah, it seems a bit coincidental, right? That footage, with the timestamp somewhat matching how things played out, was a form of evidence, important evidence, and as well how it depicted Brena in that footage, and as well the shirt in that footage, which was later retrieved by police, okay? And when they took it in and they checked the DNA and stuff, Dylan's DNA was found on that shirt. Of course, remains have not been found till this day, so maybe it's not 100% full proof, but there is a fair bit of evidence to suggest Brena played a role, and with him supposed to be the only one on site at the time besides Dylan, it seems more than likely, right? That's just how things played out, okay? So the phone, okay, with the video on it from Dylan's phone, the biggest key turning point which shifted Brena being charged at a later point, many months on, with the murder and desecration of Dylan Rounds, okay? So the initial part of Brena being taken in by police was unrelated to the case. It was to do with other charges and pending ones. And then whilst Brena was being held and also interrogated and also doing that lie detector test, okay, which seemed to tie in with questions on the Dylan Rounds case, and then giving that space of time for things to be found out there or retrieved from labs, eventually pulling it all together in the future to then charge Brenner. Do you see how things played out? The fact that Brenner was taken in to begin with had nothing to do with the case, but with time, it had everything to do with the case when more stuff was found and retrieved and brought into the mix. So even in the early days, when we talk about the lie detector test results that Brenner failed on the polygraph test, questions to do with the Dylan Rounds case, that was early on during the times of the first time interrogations and maybe the last time of interrogations with Brenner. And I guess that may have coincided near to the time of when Brenner was initially taken in to begin with, which had nothing to do with the case. Do you see how things played out? So what my point is, what I'm suggesting is with Bibbins being in trouble, getting in trouble with police, unrelated to the Dylan Rounds case, you could argue, but still, gun charges, maybe that's the method that was used to take Dylan out at the time on the 28th of May 2022. You never know. But it could follow the same pattern with Brenner. Bibbins in trouble, taken in by police, then interrogated, and then questioned about the Dylan Rounds case because Bibbins lives in Lucin, Utah, which is kind of south or so of Sun Tunnels. Okay? So besides Brenner, besides Don Hatley, besides Chase Venstre, as some out there claim living near the pond at the time or not, what about Bibbins? If Bibbins lives in the area, could be seen as a suspect, a person of interest. A person of interest in which evidence is found down the line, which then could pin the blame onto him in some way or a form of responsibility. That's exactly what happened with Brenner. There's a small chance it could happen with Bibbins, okay? One thing leads to another. Domino effect, right? One thing I do want to add in, you could question, why has it taken this long, okay? Related or unrelated to the Dylan Rounds case, why is it taking this long for Bibbins to be apprehended by police? Well, could there be a catalyst in between which sped it up, right? If you refer back to Brenner and just the aggravated assault in 2021, a year or two onwards, dragged out. What was the catalyst which sped up that pending arrest? It was the gun charges coinciding around the time of the Dylan Rounds case. Gun charges being separate from the Dylan Rounds case and separate from the 2021 aggravated assault. But it was brought to the police's attention at that time, at that moment, because Don Hatley reached out like a snake in the grass and grassed on Brenner. So then that coincided with Brenner getting arrested by police, taken in, and as well, it coinciding with speeding up of, well, whilst we're here, the police, we might as well take note and action of the previous pending charge arrest warrant and take him in for that as well. So when it comes to Bibbins, could that happen there? Now, what would be that evidence, that catalyst, which would trigger one thing to another? Well, although it's not been publicly shown on details or records, okay, let's be honest there. The only other thing that's making me think, right? Remember a few months ago or so when Candice Cooley at CrimeCon mentioned to the Sun article that within that time frame of the searchers out there, the little private searchers with the K9 team, that DNA evidence was found. New DNA evidence. The actual item itself, or what it was that was found, wasn't explained. The location wasn't explained. As for the DNA upon it, whatever it is, was not explained at that time because it was pending. It was like underway, trying to figure out whose DNA it is. So I guess sent to the labs around the time. Have the results come back yet? Don't know. Are the family keeping quiet about it? Maybe, right? But if they're saying new DNA evidence was found, they're saying in the article, The Sun, on behalf of Candice Cooley and stuff, they're hoping that it pins to Brenner. And I guess people hope because it's just more evidence to reinforce and put behind Brenner as incriminating evidence. But for those to hope that that evidence of DNA links to Brenner further would imply that those people have a lack of confidence to begin with, that what's already been found isn't enough stacked against Brenner to begin with, which would be considered not 100% guarantee in Brenner being sent down and going to trial, etc. So there's a little bit of uncertainty there from the eyes of some who word it as, we hope it's pinned onto Brenner. But what if that new DNA evidence was found? That DNA belongs to somebody else. Could it belong to Bibbins? If Bibbins has been in trouble just recently and it's been dragged out and it could have been done a long time ago, just like the Brenner situation, has something else tied in line recently, like with Brenner and the gun charges and Don Hatley reaching out there as to what maybe the new DNA evidence being found by those canine dogs, which that DNA, more so in recent time, the reports may have come back from the labs, which has deemed what Bibbins, it linking to him. So Bibbins has been apprehended alongside being in possession of a firearm he's not supposed to have, but also the possibilities of that DNA, which is linked to the Dylan Rounds case. One thing leads to another, interrogated further, maybe some additional evidence found along the way, stacked against Bibbins, and then what happens? Charged as well. Would that have any impact or change on Brenner? If somebody else comes into the light now, a new lead, a new suspect, a new person at fault? You see what I'm saying? I'm providing an explanation, okay, as to how Bibbins could link to the Dylan Rounds case. Besides the fact that Bibbins can be treated as a person of interest due to the fact that Bibbins lives in Lucin, lives there at the time of Dylan's death and going missing. You get what I'm saying? Would Bibbins, where he's located, have tied in with a possible witness of the truck leaving Grain Shed 3 p.m. after? Hold on to that for now. Once I've pinned down the location of a certain area, I can measure and put into perspection, the possibilities there. That's something completely different. But bit by bit, we're looking at different people with time, and now the time has come to Bibbins. Not enough has come about around him. So it's now time for me to step up, for me to cover, and for others, well, some can scuttle if they wish to. We've already seen first-time photos of Bibbins, which has been great, so you get an idea of what he looks like. So whilst I'm telling these stories, ideas, possibilities, and possible links, and also looking at the facts in between, which are available, you can picture it in your mind, you can visualize what the person looks like and how they could have acted at the time, just like with Brenner, right? You look at a still photo of Brenner and the image can be ingrained into your mind, and you can picture it better and clearer when following through with the recall of events or how things played out or what could have played out. Just that still photo, you analyze the expressions, could be expressionless, no emotion, nothing, cool, calm, whatever. Well, that was backed up by Canis Cooley, Justin Rounds, when they confronted him at the time, face to face, when they got down there. He didn't seem that fazed, didn't seem that bothered, okay? So by looking at a photo, then applying it to what was actually said as a fact, a witness report, then applying it to future ideas, that photo can tell many stories. So the same could be applied to Bibbins, okay? If people want to add on additional information regarding Bibbins or the relationship between Brenner and Bibbins, feel free to do so down below in the comments section. If you are in a situation where there's some additional key points or maybe some sensitive stuff and you really want to share it, but on a one-on-one basis, and it's valid and it's genuine, where you can reach out on Instagram. On my channel page, you click on the About section. I think that will be under my username because of the layout on YouTube. When you click more links, you'll be linked to the different accounts of me elsewhere in which you can go onto and then send a message or reach out in some way, okay? I am on Twitter. I don't know if the Twitter link is on YouTube, but you'll be able to find it some way or another, okay? So, with that all in mind, I think a better, backstory was mentioned here, but it was deserved for a separate standalone video. We covered the breaking news at the time, right? And then we can add on from there. The format of these videos, not just of this case, but anything out there, right? We need to reflect back on the Kenny Veach aspect too, because it puts it all into perspective. Yeah, you can have these YouTubers and stuff that come on in, big channels or not, and they cover it for the first time ever, and it's perfectly organized, it's very clear, straight to the point, not dragged out, one event followed by another. People will acknowledge it. It's clean, it's straight to the point, it's got a good flow, unlike all these other channels, such as this one. But at the end of the day, people have been given the material and stuff just like that, right? But it's the foundations, okay? The background of what happened to get to that point. You know, one had to do separate videos, bit by bit, building a pyramid to get the overall look and picture on things. Those building blocks along the way. That's how things work. And that's the best method here. You try taking it all in into one video, not possible. It could go wrong. You try summarizing the entire story without having the entire picture or puzzles of the jigsaw to begin with, is destined to failure. You look at what's currently present. You take it into mind. You may compare, you may contrast, you may analyze, pick up on stuff, elaborate from there. You dissect it, whether it's the overall picture or an overall event, a subsection in the case, an inner mystery to the mystery itself. You piece by piece, you use a scalpel, you separate, you split it apart, right? All these like DNA cell groups spread out in front of you, and you look at each little strand, each little node, each little atom, whatever it may be. You look into it, you make sense of it, you debunk or reinforce. And once you've got to that point where you've got an understanding of the situation, you can move on to the next strand, the next node, and so on and so on. And once you're confident enough, or you have a better idea of telling it all in one go as a story, as facts, whatever it may be, you can stitch it all back together again. This is a doctor's surgery, and a formal procedure will take place, and it will be repeated time and time again. Just like now, whilst we're getting the scalpel and separating it down, splitting it, besides Brenner, besides the others, let's look at Bibbins. His name has not been acknowledged enough. He's not been looked into enough. And some people can play it down and say, well, simply because he's got no role in the case or not enough. He's a person of interest due to location of the area of what happened. That's enough to begin with, okay? People have focused enough with Kurt Wadsworth, somebody that doesn't even live in Lucerne, but people have found ties and links to put the argument across that there is some kind of link and appliance to the Dylan Rounds case. But as what the family said, if people didn't talk about the BS, the bullshit, the rubbish in the background, like the likes of Montello, Kurt Wadsworth, probably would have never been put onto the map or heard of to begin with, if it wasn't for the people spreading lies and BS in the background and unrelated, unnecessary drama and gossip going on in the town or something, like a soap drama, right? But people still made it their point to involve Kurt Wadsworth in the Dylan Rounds case, and they've got their reasons behind it. So those type of people that will criticize me and say, oh, you shouldn't be focusing on Bibbins, hypocrite, pathetic, human. Simple as. We're looking at Bibbins, it's now time, and there is material to look at, and the possibilities are open to interpretation, theories, ideas, concepts. Is it reinforced enough? Not at this moment in time, but it's very clear as to what it's about and how it's done, unlike the other humans over time that did twist and turn it as if it was facts, as if it was events, as if it was relevant to the case when it wasn't, okay? If this turns out to be a dead end, it'll be very clear as to it being a dead end and how it went along the way, okay? And if at any moment in time, breaking news or external news coming from elsewhere, it can reinforce what's been talked about and complement it. If down the line, all those dreams are shattered because reality comes on in to debunk it all, that will be included and documented along the way. Either we keep on digging and pushing forwards to make progression, or we eventually get to the point where we can tie off a loose end, cut it off, and then there's no more confusion and there's no need to go down a rabbit hole, okay? It's all under control here, and that's simply it, okay? So, there are a few little videos in between which we can do, such as the Heavy D one, looking back at that. I've made notes on my phone, the notepad, short form videos here and there, maybe some longer ones too. So this could be the beginning of a small little series where we look at additional ideas. If you want to add on, share your thoughts, perspectives on Bibbins alone, as I said, leave comments down below. If you do have questions, feel free to list them down below, and maybe in a future video they can be acknowledged. But that's it for now. I think it's been a pretty successful video, and more than expected in my mind, because it was supposed to be a 2-minute video simply covering an update on the dog of Bibbins. And look how much deeper we've gone. The unexpected, right? And there could be more to come. You don't know what's going to happen next or what's around the corner. But we'll see eventually. So thanks for watching. Goodbye. Good night for now.